Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to our /ProRevenge, where people get back at others who've wronged them and lives are absolutely destroyed. And in this episode, we've got nightmare bosses, cheating spouses, psycho mother-in-laws, and shady realtors all getting their lives ruined. I hope you enjoy the stories today. Hit subscribe if you're not subscribed, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So mobile phones became common in my country around 2004, just as I finished high school. My parents bought me my first phone, a second-hand Nokia. It was bulky and basic, but I promised myself that someday I would buy a new phone with my own money. When I went to college a few years later, I bought myself a Sony Ericsson and a premium SIM card, not realizing it had been abandoned by its previous owner. By the third day, I start receiving calls for this guy named Bitsa, fake name, from various financial institutions. It turned out the number previously belonged to him. Determined to keep my premium number, I began a routine of blocking wrong numbers. Back then, blocking was device-specific, so each time I got a new phone, I had to start over, keeping a list of numbers to block. I got my first job after graduating in 2009. Around 2010, I was assigned to a new project with a notorious reputation for burning people out due to a nefarious manager named Bits. I didn't know his full name for quite a while. The guy took pride in making our lives a living hell. Bits ruled with an iron fist. From the moment his team steps into the office, they were met with a barrage of emails and messages, each more urgent than the last. Bits thrived on creating chaos, often changing project deadlines on a whim and demanding his team work late into the night and through weekends. Bits' presence loomed over every task. He insisted on micromanaging every detail, yet he was quick to take credit for any successes, no matter how small. The failures, however, were met with his notorious tirades, publicly berating his team and assigning blame without hesitation. His unpredictable temper kept everyone on edge. Everyone was afraid to make the slightest mistake. Meetings were another tool in his arsenal of torment. The guy scheduled them during lunch breaks and after hours, ensuring no one could escape his grasp. The meetings were often pointless, serving only to reinforce his dominance and disrupt any semblance of work-life balance his team might have. His relentless stream of emails continued around the clock, each carrying a thin-veiled threat, perfection or dismissal. Under his reign, morale plummeted and burnout soared. Yet Bits remained oblivious, satisfied by only his complete and total control. I was actually quite ashamed when I learned that he was from the same area I was, and he had gone to the same high school, though years before me. In 2012, our company merges with a parent company. Almost nothing changed personnel-wise, but infrastructure-wise, we got MS Outlook and an organization view. That's when I first learned about Bits from an organizational hierarchy perspective. His first name was an eye-opener. It was Bitsa. Now, the name was common enough, but at the time, mobile numbers had an area-specific pattern, so I knew that the previous owner of my number was from the same area as me. Still, it could be someone else, and I wanted to dig deeper. I talked with an old mentor who lived in the same area, and he had coached several high school students for the last 2 decades. He confirmed my suspicions. Now, I won't go into details, but it was evident that Bitsa and Bits were the same person. I had been quite pissed with this unknown person named Bitsa for almost a decade by then, and Bits had been the bane of my existence for quite some time, and several others. And this is where the revenge lies. First, I unblocked all the numbers in my phone. I was getting 5 to 6 calls daily on average, but after unblocking about 150 numbers, it increased to 15 to 18. My answering strategy also changed drastically. Instead of saying wrong number, I politely explained that the owner had changed his number, and then provided his current number to update their database. And this is where I could be considered the a-hole. I also volunteered his manager's number, just in case he tries something else. And the fallout was epic. These people had been trying to find him for almost a decade. The banks had sold his debts to companies that harass people for a living to get their money back. It turns out the guy had been taking loans in everyone's names: his wife, his parents, his uncles, and his aunts. And he was giving everyone that same number. The guy was evading credit card debt and loans of upwards of $200,000 US. And where I'm from, that translates to a load of money. Apparently, he had almost 20 cases filed against him, but no one could find him. Probably why he thought he could walk on water. There are multiple versions of what happened at the office when his manager starts to get calls about him. He was let go about 2 months later, and I haven't heard from him since. What a well-played revenge, and I've said this so often before, like, this is why you always have to be kind to people, because you never know who will start feeling a bit vindictive and want to take you down. Like, the way it went down was so perfect. It's almost like the universe wanted that a-hole boss to face the consequences. And for all who are curious to where OP's from, they pop into the comments to say this happened in India. And according to them, something like this happening in a country like India, you're basically ruined forever. That guy will never recover. But yeah, he totally reaped what he sowed, and OP delivered it. So way back in the early 2000s, I began to suspect that my wife was up to something. Our 2 kids were about 4 and 6 years old, which is still young, but not so young that they couldn't tell you what happened in their day. They started talking a lot about staying with my wife's parents during the day, which wasn't really that strange itself, but since they lived about 90 minutes away, doing so 2 to 3 times a week seemed a bit much. And that was basically every day my wife wasn't working her part-time job. When I asked her about it, she denied it, but she was never a good liar. So I'd start tracking the mileage on her car, and sure enough, she was driving an extra 400 miles per week. That's when I knew something was going on. Then one day, I sat down at the computer and she had left her email open accidentally. I couldn't resist, so I started going through some emails and I saw a few email exchanges between her and her college best friend, where they discussed how my wife was seeing an ex-boyfriend from high school. There was no mention of details about him, other than my wife also talking crap about his wife and making fun of how she'd gotten bigger after having kids. Anyways, I printed out these email exchanges and I stashed them. I still needed to know the details, so I called a friend who was a cop, and he suggested that I call a guy he knew that had left the force to become a private investigator. We'll call this guy Ron. Now, Ron was great. I paid his retainer fee and gave him the emails and what little I knew about my wife's activities, and he figured out exactly what she was doing. His report was detailed with photos, along with times, dates, and locations, all about how she would take the kids to her parents, and then go meet this guy for lunch, and they would go to a dumpy motel for a few hours after, and then she would pick up the kids and return home. At this point, I hire a divorce lawyer. My parents cheated on each other, and the fallout absolutely effed mine and my siblings' childhood. It was something that was totally unacceptable. I also asked Ron to find out what he could about this guy, and Ron absolutely came through. I learned this guy's name was Bob, and he was married and he had 3 kids. I also found out that he worked as VP of sales for his father-in-law's business, and at this point, I had my lawyer drop divorce papers. I also asked Ron for a couple of more copies of his report, and I had one more thing I wanted him to do for me. On the same day I had my wife served with divorce papers at her work, I had Ron meet with this guy's wife and show her everything he'd found out. She seemed nice, and I figured that she deserves to know what her dear hubby was up to. What she did with that information was up to her. Little did I know, Bob's wife did a real number on him. According to the publicly available court documents from the divorce, and the other related proceedings, she cleaned out their joint account, she took the kids, and she left. As soon as her dad found out what he had done, Bob was fired, and since her parents actually owned the house where Bob and his wife lived, he also got evicted. Their divorce was ugly. I guess Bob went to the house and he starts arguing with his wife, and it escalated to the point that her brother stepped in and Bob got his nose broken. There were also restraining orders and a few more incidents with police reports, criminal charges, jail time, and so on. I can't find Bob on the internet anywhere nowadays. Last I heard, the guy had left the state and his ex-wife did okay. She went to work at her dad's company and took over after he retired. As for me, my ex and I got along well enough. I didn't engage with her on anything that wasn't related to the kids. And now that they're both adults, I don't even talk to her at all anymore. I don't hate her or anything, but I only care in the context that she's my kid's mom and it's important to them. Nothing beyond that. Holy moly, what a fallout that was. And I can't say it wasn't deserved because cheaters deserve nothing good happening to them. But yeah, serious props to OP for staying mature and keeping it together, instead of seeing red the moment he read those emails that confirmed the affair was real. OP played the long, patient game, and in the end, he ruined everyone. As for what happened with his wife, OP does pop into the comments, and he said, "I was definitely angry with my wife. Don't get me wrong. My revenge is I made her suffer throughout the divorce. For example, she wanted to try couples therapy and I agreed. Not because I thought there was a path to reconciliation, but because it felt good to lay out exactly how I felt about what she'd done. How disgusted, how disappointed, how angry I was with her. She always left those appointments in tears and she would sit bawling in her car for a while before pulling herself together. Eventually, she realized it was already over for us and she canceled the remaining appointments. I also had to think about what was best for the kids. I wasn't going to bring the chaos that I experienced into their lives, where I saw my parents screaming at each other, my dad calling my mom names, and worse, getting the cops involved, and vice versa. It was in their best interest to make things go smoothly. I've never told them the details of what happened between their mom and I probably never will. I don't know what she's told them about it, but I still have Ron's report stashed away, just in case they need to see the truth. Also, I wasn't really angry with Bob for my own sake. I was angry with him on behalf of his wife. I felt like she deserved to at least know what was going on, and what she chose to do about it was up to her. Bob's consequences are due to his wife's rage at what he'd done. I just lit the fuse. Again, class act by OP, and props to him for staying so mature throughout all of this for the sake of his kids, right? And while we're on the topic of cheating, you guys gotta hear this next one, where OP kind of accidentally destroys someone's life. Okay, so I'm by no means an expert or pro at revenge, but I am a patient person. 7 years ago, I was lucky enough to be able to buy my own place. I had saved for 10 years, worked my butt off, and I was so happy to have a place to call my own. Now, being a single person on the mortgage meant I had to make compromises. One such compromise was buying a property on a shared block, which was a lot cheaper. Where I'm from, this usually means it's on a strata title. And for some, that's a bonus, as it means there's a communal fund for repairs, and typically insurance is cheaper as it's collective, and other things like maintenance being taken care of. Now, strata titles also come with a lot of bylaws and restrictions on what you can and can't do. I'm a private and introverted person, so having to deal with people and have limits on how I live was a huge no-no. I took my time and I found the perfect property. It was a shared block, but freehold title, which meant no strata. The only thing I needed to pay was a public liability insurance for the shared walkway on the property, which was split equally between the owners. That said, the real estate agent is local to my area. There's also about 3 degrees of separation between us. The guy has friends who are friends with my friends, type of thing. I didn't know him, but I knew of him, so that sort of felt good too. Well, about 5 months after I move in, I get a knock on the door from the owner, the landlord of the property next to me, to discuss insurance. I thought that wasn't a problem, so I ask for a copy of the policy so I have a record. It gets sent through, and lo and behold, it's for strata insurance. I was incredibly confused, and after much back and forth, the property isn't a freehold title, but a strata title. So I call my lawyer who conveyed the title, etc. He was dumbfounded, but overall did the right thing and made things as right as they could. So I arrange a meeting with the real estate agent. I brought emails and printouts of the ad they had, all saying it was freehold. Emails between the real estate agent and my lawyer discussing its freehold status. Despite it being black and white, he refused to accept any fault or offer anything to make things right. I don't begrudge that, as he's looking out for himself. I get that. However, I wouldn't forget it. I did enter into mediation with the real estate agent, and all I asked for was when the time came for me to sell, they'd do it or they would cover the cost. Now I thought this was reasonable, but they flat out refused, and they offered me $1,000 to go away, which I refused, claiming that I should have paid more attention and what's done is done. I did have the option to pursue them legally, and that was advised by the mediator. But I ultimately decided against it for a few reasons, the main one being my health at the time. So I planned and plotted, and I schemed and connived as to how to get back at this son of a bitch, and I settled on this. I found the guy's personal Facebook page, which wasn't set to private, and I saw some photos of a boys on tour trip that he went on a few weeks prior, about 5 to 6 months after I bought the property. I also found the guy's address through a business registration search. On the anniversary of the sale, for 6 years straight, I sent them flowers with a note saying, "Dear real estate agent, remembering you on this, our special day. She has your eyes. Love, Ellie." Now, the notes varied ever so slightly over the years, but always had "on this, our special day," followed by some weird inference to a love child and a desire to reconnect. I also from time to time arranged for postcards and letters to be sent from another country, the one he was on tour in, always signed "Love, Ellie." I learned about 3 weeks ago that this guy had recently divorced. He lost his home and he's no longer working as a real estate agent. His wife had found out he cheated on her. The story that I was told through friends of friends went along the lines of he would get weird gifts and flowers every single year, the same day every year. His wife finally put 2 and 2 together and she realized what the date was, and he admitted to cheating on her. Now, I didn't mean for this, but it turns out a year before I bought my house, he had gone on holiday, and he came back with an STD and gave it to his wife, but somehow convinced her that it wasn't him. As such, our special day turned out to be right around the time he was messing around with someone who wasn't his wife, only 1 year earlier. The guy apparently lost his house, half his retirement savings, and also his business. I do feel a bit guilty about it sometimes, but then I'm reminded that he's a scumbag, and that karma, like me, is patient, spiteful, and a vengeful bitch. Again, what a fallout that was, and that's why you should never cheat. But seriously, what are the chances of that happening? Like, literally everything had to align so perfectly to ruin the guy, and it did. But yeah, with that said guys, the real estate agent might have been deceptive for a payday, but ultimately, when OP met up with the lawyers to sign and finalize everything, I can't help but to wonder how in the world they missed that. What an outcome that was, nonetheless. And this person comments, "Next year, send him a Polaroid of your middle finger, signed Love, Ellie." I'm a 46-year-old female, and I have 2 daughters, 17 and 15, and they have a strained relationship with my ex-husband's parents, who are 78 and 80 years old. My ex passed away in an accident last year, and since then, we've had some major family drama due to his cheating and him leaving 2 boys born with his affair partner, orphaned. She also died. A part of the drama has been my ex-in-laws trying to get custody of my daughters, and them also trying to live with us. The first one we're going to court over, and the second one will never happen. Where we live, there's a weekend market with fresh produce, eggs, meat, and other products straight from farmers. This week was extra special since it was my youngest daughter's birthday. Since her birthday's later in the month, I decided to give her a budget and set her loose on the market to get whatever she wanted, mostly chocolates and sweets. After an hour, I started getting worried. And just before I called her, she called me, and she was crying, saying some weird people are harassing her. I ran to her with my oldest daughter to find 6 older women berating my daughter for being unchristian, for refusing to spend time with her paternal grandparents, or for wanting to be a good big sister to her poor orphaned baby brothers. My daughters are the ones that found out about my ex cheating and the babies, so they aren't fond of the kids. It's trauma and they're working with a therapist. I got between the group and my daughter, telling my eldest to go pay for the stuff her sister had and to go to the car. Then I turned to the women, some who I knew from when we went to my ex-in-law's church, and I ripped them a new one. They told me that I was the worst for refusing to obey my ex-in-laws like a good Christian wife. Eventually, the screaming turned too loud, and we were all asked to leave the market. I met with my girls in the car, and the women were following me like a group of vultures. I managed to get in the car and drive away. After my girls went to bed, I got online to talk to another member of the church that I'm on good terms with. I told him what happened, and after he apologized, he told me what was going on. It turns out my ex-mother-in-law had posted this massive story in the church's Facebook group about how horrible my daughters and I are, how we're leaving them homeless and penniless, and how my daughters don't even talk to them. Now, this wasn't true, as they inherited my ex's personal bank account and his life insurance. She also accused us of being the reasons she lost her grandsons. The boys are now living with distant relatives of my ex-husband. Basically, it was a sob story worthy of a Hallmark movie. And of course, they were getting all the love and support from the more extremist members of their church. The church and its members are a bit annoying, but they have a small saving grace. They're incredibly strict about cheating. It's a big no-no, be it from a husband or a wife equally. Now, you may be wondering, how did she get around blaming me about affair children without exposing the cheating? Well, she claimed the other woman was our surrogate since I was unable to have more kids. Then she said I didn't want the babies because they were boys, which is absolutely disgusting to be accused of. That's when I decided it was time to clean up this mess. And since I was mid-divorce when my ex died, I had all the evidence I needed. And since the divorce wasn't completed, I don't have any legal ramification for releasing all the evidence. I was off the next day, and I went to a print shop to get copies of all the delightful pictures of my ex cheating, the text conversations with his affair partner, texts with his parents confessing to his cheating and getting support from them, my ex-in-laws harassing me about the divorce, and my coup de grace, all the emails and text messages of them bullying my daughters about their baby brothers. In one of them, they called my daughters bastards and telling them that it was their fault their dad died, since they told me about the affair and I began the divorce. This one was literally 2 days after my ex died. I even paid extra for all of this to be printed in beautiful high-quality paper. And then, when I got home, I sat down for hours making delightfully personalized binders. They look like the little prayer song packets that the church gives for everyone to take to sing hymns. The first picture when opening the binders is my ex and his side woman making out in our living room. Their faces are easy to discern and the girl looks nothing like me, different skin tones and hair color. Underneath, I wrote Joseph and Jessica's love story, not real names. I took them to the church before service. There's a desk in the back with the songbooks for people that need or forget their own, and they never check them. The gossip mill was quick and harsh. The names my ex and his affair partner got called in the Facebook group were so bad that the pastor himself had to get involved just to keep things relatively PG-13. People were angry at my ex-in-laws for their abuse to my daughters. But what made me laugh was that I was still in the wrong for divorce. But it's, quote, understandable that I failed my duties after the shock, and I will possibly one day return to the light, unlike my cheating husband and his Jezebel. I got 2 apology letters in the mail for my girls, and an invitation to join the church for support. As for my ex-in-laws, they got shamed into leaving the church. My ex-mother-in-law then made a post on Facebook about how alienated she feels and how no one cares for the elderly anymore. How she wished her great son was still alive, since he would have taken care of her and her husband. With what money, I don't know, since I was the breadwinner. It's just so funny how mother-in-law plays the victim after being so nasty. No one cares for the elderly anymore, as if being old trumps the fact that someone's a nasty old witch. I just hope OP's daughters recognize how badass their mom is. But yeah, the absolute audacity of that woman. Trying to steal OP's kids from her while also begging OP to let them live in her house. Like, that's a level of entitlement that reaches new levels, and I've read a lot of crazy stories. So when I was 15 years old, I was diagnosed with bipolar schizophrenia. Now, despite what TV shows and movie portrays, not all schizophrenia are serial killers. If you can keep your medication in balance, you can live a perfectly normal life. From the age of 15 to 20, it was rather hard, as we tried to find the right balance and medication for me. But it's been 11 years since I was first diagnosed, and it's been 6 years since I've had really bad symptoms. There have been a few minor issues when my meds would go out of balance, but nothing too extreme. Anyways, this happened 3 years ago. I had just moved into a new apartment with 2 new roommates. We'll call them Zach and Rachel. And yes, those are their real names because F them. Anyways, due to my illness, I take multiple medications, an antipsychotic, antidepressant, and an anti-anxiety medication, to name a few. These are all rather strong medications. So when I first moved in and got settled, I started to notice that some of my meds start going missing. I have my pills counted out and ready, so I know exactly how many I have. I immediately suspect my roommates, as they were the only ones with access to my room. I also knew for a fact that they took other medications to get high. They were pretty open about it. But I had no proof, and I didn't want to risk pissing them off as I had to live with them. So I looked past, hoping it was a one-time thing, but it wasn't. After a few days of this, I lost it, and I confront them. They denied it, and of course, I had no proof. I even got a lock for my room, but somehow, they still managed to get in. And this is where the revenge starts. So due to all my medication, I get constipated a lot. So I have a very strong laxative I take when this happens. They're tiny, pinkish pills. If you don't know about my medication, you could easily mistake those for something else. One morning, before heading to work, I took my antipsychotic pill bottles and I switched out the pills for my laxatives, and then I left. When I came home that evening, both my roommates were in the washroom. I asked Rachel what was wrong, and she made up some BS food poisoning excuse. They spent the whole night in and out of the bathroom. My medication stops disappearing after that night. Yeah, in my opinion, OP just needs to get out of there if they can, and I wish those 2 roommates got more than what they got. Like, messing with someone's prescription medication is already such an a-hole thing to do, but a person who suffers from mental illness, as if they don't already have enough crap to deal with. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /ProRevenge. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up, and if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's in our /malicious compliance episode, where nasty landlords are getting taught lessons by their tenants, and the stories are so wild. Guys, go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.